Welcome to the Top Shelf Dusters podcast. I am Amanda, the fact checker for this crew. And tonight we are joined by Brett.
Hey guys, just a few seconds of self promotion here. I spent the past month, maybe 2 months, putting the NCAA into NHL 24. So if you're someone who plays NHL 24, you want to download an NCAA hockey roster, you just got to go to roster sharing, download community files, type in NCAA 24. You'll find my different versions. My latest version has at least has 28 fully rostered teams, which include all 16 for the Frozen Four tournament. So check it out. I spent a lot of time on it. Hope people get a chance to use it.
Perfect. And with Cass.
I have already downloaded this. But the Boston Bruins have clinched their 8th straight postseason berth, the longest active streak in the NHL, and they don't have a cup in the last 8 years. So that's that.
And with Ethan.
And unlike the Boston Bruins, the Dallas Stars are the first team in their conference to clinch a playoff berth. So go Stars.
They also don't have a cup in the last 8 years.
You know what?
We miss you too, Jesse.
Fair.
His team also doesn't have a cup in the last 8 years, but I don't think they've clinched yet, right? Or have they? No, they have.
No, they were the first
They were
in the
first.
East. Right, you have
no,
no
they have,
room
they
to
have.
speak. You're the only franchise on this podcast that does not have a cup.
We're closer than we've ever been.
Hey, that's true.
So perfect. So tonight we've got some injuries to go over, some suspensions and fines. We got some weird things that kind of happened and things that are about to happen, some fun milestones, and then of course what the playoffs are shaping up like. So we will start with the news.
Yeah. I'll kick us off with telling you guys that the Yager bobbleheads
And this is pressing. This is very pressing news.
Yeah, this is it's fun. Oh, I don't know, it's kind of fun, and we got some insight to it. The Yager bobbleheads were recovered. So 2 weeks ago, we talked about here on this podcast, an entire shipment of Yarmir Yager bobbleheads were stolen. But as of March 27th, that was this past week, the shipment has been recovered, and the Penguins do plan to distribute the bobbleheads on April 6th when the Penguins play the Tampa Bay Lightning. And they're also going to give out whatever's left at a drive-through the next day. So what I was able to find an article talking about what all basically happened. So a special cargo recovery team had to negotiate for the return of the stolen bobbleheads. Here's some direct details from the Penguins president of business operation, Kevin Acklin. This is what he said. They didn't arrive. At first, we heard that there were some engine troubles, and then it sounded like a group of extortionists had stolen the bobbleheads, maybe along with some other merchandise, and they were negotiating with the trucking company to release them. So somebody put fake paperwork in the hands of a distribution center. They walked away and drove away with the bobbleheads, and were starting to make contact. And they were starting to make contact with the company about delivering it back. Ultimately, it took about a week, and the Penguins weren't directly involved in paying any ransom. It was on the supplier to recover them and deliver them, and they did that. Now, I'm not 100% sure if they paid anything for that. My guess is that they probably did, and they have insurance for this kind of loss. So, and the thieves have yet to be identified or arrested. So they literally had to negotiate for the return of the bobbleheads.
Okay, now this is the time to come clean, Brett. Did you steal the bobbleheads? Just be honest.
I was not in Ontario, California 2 weeks ago, so no, I have a good alibi as well. So.
Well, I'm glad they got found. You know, I would love to know what the Penguin forums looked like after that game, because you go to the game, obviously you don't regret going to the game, but it's just like, I mean, here in Dallas for the Madonna thing, it got rained out, and so everything kind of got moved around, and fans were mad just about a statue unveiling, and I can't even imagine about a giveaway. So hopefully you have tickets.
I think it was Amanda, because Yager did not play for her team. played for every other team on this podcast except the Canes. So
Not me.
that's my theory, and I'm sticking with it. It was a Nick and Amanda inside job.
I used one of my many
podcast.
kids to help facilitate the stealing.
Yeah, that's true. Child labor. Check it out.
One thing I would say, Ethan, is that the Penguins will have a voucher thing where if you were at that game, that's part of why they're doing that pickup on the April 7th. So anyone who has a voucher can come on April 7th. If they don't have tickets for the Tampa Bay game, they can pick up the bobbleheads the day after. So they're being pretty cool about it.
Like the traveling Yoggers. What happens if you traveled for the game and you're not in the Pittsburgh area?
Dude, that would,
like,
yeah, they'll probably
mail it to me, and that goes missing too.
Well, let's get started with the injuries. Couple injuries,
Sure.
not as many as we're used to.
Yeah. So our first one, I can take. I got some extensive notes for tonight because I knew Jesse wasn't going to be here, and he's normally the notes guy, so I took his place here. So Oscar Sundqvist is going to miss 6 months with an ACL tear, and he suffered the injury when facing the Golden Knights on March 25th when Brandon McNabb checked him into the corner of the offensive zone. It led to Sundqvist falling awkwardly, and his foot got caught while going into the boards. So not good. And if this sounds familiar, it's because Sundqvist already has torn his ACL in his career. The other time came in 2021, actually around this same time of the year. It was March 19th, and he wasn't able to come back until November 16th, which caused him to miss 14 games of the start of the following season. And that's what's kind of expected to happen this time too. He's going to miss probably 6 months with that ACL tear.
I can't imagine an ACL tear. But the good news for St. Louis, obviously you don't want to see one of your players go down, and they are in the playoff hunt, which we'll get to here in a little bit about teams kind of on the cusp and whatnot. But Sundqvist was not like a top ice time guy. In the last games he was in, against Minnesota on the 16th, 9 minutes 54 seconds. Game before that, 13 minutes 30 seconds, 10 minutes 31 seconds before that. Overall, he's not a guy that's on the ice a lot, but it could be a good chance for a young guy to come up and show that, hey, I'm the guy.
Jack Dean.
But doesn't stop there. This is kind of old news, but it's something worth noting. The Vancouver Canucks did put Thatcher Demko on LTIR. And so obviously he's been out for a long time. If you're in fantasy hockey like myself and you had Demko on your team, I apologize. I also missed out on the finals in one of my leagues because of this injury.
Demko.
Yep. Thanks a lot, Tristan Jarry. You suck. But anyways, he has been put on LTIR. So he can't play until April 6th. So I don't know that they play him until the playoffs. Maybe just in that last couple games, just to get him going. But
this is one thing that I wanted to mention with this because it's something I didn't know. So they put him on LTIR after he already missed 6 games being listed week to week. And then they placed him on LTIR. And those 6 games he missed are going to count towards the 10.
It's a retroactive.
Yeah. I thought that was kind of interesting. So it's wherever the injury starts, and it doesn't necessarily matter when you put him on LTIR. So I guess you could even have a guy miss 10 games, put him on LTIR, and reactivate him whenever because he's already served those 10 games. I thought that was kind of interesting.
And it feels interesting because you've got other teams that just like to instantly go to LTIR, especially if you're right before the trade deadline. We weren't going to name names, Cass, but
you could mention Toronto did something kind of weird today, and it's just not really.
Yeah, but Toronto isn't a threat. Vegas is.
Yeah, no, you're right. But Toronto randomly put Marner on this sort of injury list, but it's not because it was like, I don't even think it's because he's hurt. They said they just needed to bring some guy up, so they had to free up cap space. So they had to put him on some kind of IR. So that was definitely kind of taking advantage of it for sure.
Well, it is, but it's not in the same
Guess not.
category, you know, because
Right, they're calling someone up and not trading for.
Right, you're not
somebody.
just freeing up some money to go pay some guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, the next injury update comes out of Minnesota, and it's Marcus Foligno. He is set to have season-ending injury, and I forget the guy's name. The
He's getting
Minnesota
surgery.
Wild, Minnesota Wild beat writer. He also included in this update that Minnesota they're basically shutting it down. Like, they're done pushing. They're not trying for the playoffs. They are just,
Especially after today.
yeah.
I was gonna say, was this before or after the
This
antics today?
it was very close to the same time.
Vegas scored the empty netter, which means Minnesota got 0 points, even though it was in overtime. So they're pretty much out of it.
So I've said this before, but Minnesota is such an interesting team because they have $15 million of dead cap, and they're still basically competing for a playoff spot.
Yeah,
You think
imagine how good they'd
think
be if
it-
they didn't have that,
yeah.
right?
Either that, or you think they'd pack it in and try and get a top 10 pick to make their team better for when they don't have these dead cap hits. But I don't know.
No,
Don't wanna
it's
waste
something.
Kaprizov's early
Golden
good years,
years?
I guess. Yeah, golden years.
Yeah, but
Well, no, but Cass, that's a good point. It's something that's been brought up on the podcast before, and I tell Jacob, who's been on the podcast, and he's a big Minnesota Wild fan.
poor kid.
Here in the next couple years, Minnesota is very dangerous because as soon as Suter and Parise's buyouts come off the books, which I believe is not next season but the season after, they have so much money.
Yeah.
Like,
So much that they haven't been able to
And they
use
got-
for so long.
I mean, they'll have to sign Faber, but they got Boldy signed. They got Erickson Ek signed. They got, the Foligno, I think, is signed long term. So obviously Gustafson didn't have nearly the season that they want him to have this year. I wouldn't be surprised if he rebounds next year. So it'll be interesting to see what happens to them in a couple of years.
Ethan,
The jerseys are sick, too.
say Suter's
Just throwing that out
contract,
there.
The buyout was done.
So
I'm gonna
I
just-
don't know
something.
if Amanda's trying to tell us something. I see her mouth moving, but I don't hear her.
Sorry.
She's just muttering to herself, bunch of jerks, bunch of jerks, bunch of jerks.
Hey, my bunch of jerks are winning tonight. Thank you very much.
They better. I put a bet on them.
I don't know if that makes me feel better that you did. Anyways, Ethan, what year did you say the Suter contract buyout was done?
I
Not this.
thought based off of what Jacob had said, it was not next season, but the season after.
So I'm on Cap Friendly, and it has it listed out until 2028, 2029.
That's disgusting.
Oh.
No,
both
no way.
Parise.
What about Parise?
For both.
Both. Oh
Unless
gosh, what
Cap
happened?
Friendly hasn't
Did they
updated.
did
think it goes
rework it so it's
down,
gets
so.
cheaper or what?
Yeah, significantly.
Okay.
So unless Cap Friendly just hasn't updated everything.
No, that could be right. Man, sorry,
Yeah, but
Minnesota.
hold on. After next season, it drops down to 833.
That's what it
It
is.
goes from
Oh, it's
7
nothing.
million,
You know what I mean?
7 million this year, 7 million last year to the 833 for both of them.
That's not
Yeah.
bad. So it still makes a huge difference for the Wild
Yes.
going forward.
So they just
Yeah.
have to get through next season, and then they'll be good.
They'll have a lot of extra cap space.
Yeah. So
They won't even.
But-
I mean, and the cap's already going up. Like they're gonna probably have the biggest free agency that we've seen in quite some time. 2 years from now.
yeah, it's basically
sure.
14.75 million this year and next year, and then it goes down to 1.6.
And consider all the teams who are kind of banking on the cap increase, but clearly still won't have enough space. There will be players out there. And man, okay.
And
Anyways.
Minnesota can put themselves right back in the situation they were by overpaying guys, right?
Yeah, and they probably will come up without a cup by 2030.
right.
And then the last thing, you want to take it, Brett?
Yeah, I got it. So our last thing's not necessarily an injury thing, but Ethan Bear decided to enter the player assistance program. He is the 5th player to enter the program this season, with Patrick Laine, Gerard, Nikushkin, and Kuznetsov being the others. Bear had played 24 games with the Capitals since signing that 2-year contract with them, not even that long ago. Before entering the program, though, I thought this was interesting. Bear had been a healthy scratch for 7 straight of the Capitals games before entering the program. Based on the research I was able to do, no information has been released about why he decided to enter, what may be happening, but clearly the healthy scratch had something to relate to it. He must have been asking for these games off versus it just being a performance issue.
And another player that Scott Darling did not scare off with his thoughts about the player assistance program. Moving
One thing
on.
before we move on. Not semi-player related, but here in Boston, Derek Forbert's dog Darla is very known and beloved, and she's an old pup that he rescued, and she passed away this week. So we just want to send our condolences to Derek Forbert and all of Darla's fans out there.
Hearts to you, Darla fans. Now let's talk about some terrible players.
How about not
for
terrible players?
Completely different.
Austin Matthews just scored his 60th of the season.
Congrats.
Sorry. I'm sorry. I thought you said terrible franchises. My bad. Continue.
We've got a couple suspensions, fines, etc. One, we'll see what happens. But starting off, we've got Philadelphia's Garnet Hathaway. He was fined $2,000 for embellishment, and this is the first embellishment fine that I can remember hearing about. Maybe I just haven't been looking.
It's definitely not common. I would say
ever, but I'm sure there
Subban
have
got
been.
some. There's been plenty. Let's see here.
But like 2,000, that's not, 5,000 is the max for like a high stick that could look very egregious.
Why the?
Did you find the video, Ethan, for Garnet Hathaway's embellishment? I'm just wondering, like, how bad would it have to be? Like, is it like they're for a guy to get fined over it?
And so also as far as like the 2000, the first time he got cited for it, it's just a warning. The second time he gets cited for it, it's $2,000. So
so this is the second time he's done it.
Exactly. It'll incrementally go up until it reaches that 5,000 max. But once it reaches 5 citations, now the head coach also gets fined.
Yeah, Nick Cousins got fined this year for it.
Okay,
nice.
I did find the video and I'm watching it, and it looks like an embellishment, but to get fined over it.
Well, I think it sounds like, based on what Amanda says, it's not necessarily how bad or how whatever the embellishment is. It's based on how many times he's done it in his career. So he's already been cited for embellishment once, and this is the second time he has. And so because of that, he was fined. I think that's what you're saying, right, Amanda? As long as I understood you right.
But it would have to be like if it wasn't called in the game, right? Because let's say he gets, I don't know if he did get called for that embellishment. But I know in other fines that I've looked up, it's like a player gets fined if they aren't called for the penalty in the game.
No penalty was called on the play.
Oh, what the?
Okay.
Interesting.
So that's probably what it is. Had the penalty been called, I don't know that he gets fined. Gosh.
And so he was warned earlier this year, January 2nd, when he played against the Oilers. That was his first warning.
Okay. I'm going to look this up. Does someone want to take the next one?
I got it. Yeah, sure. So I don't know. This one, it strikes me as kind of humorous. So Caden Gooley was suspended one game for slashing Travis Konecny, but it was not a normal kind of slash. So it starts with Konecny. He initiates contact with Yurtsev Slavkovsky, and they kind of like go at it, like miniature fight, but not like a full-on fight. But anyways, they're going at it for a few seconds. And so following that altercation between Konecny and Slavkovsky, Konecny is trying to get back into the play. He's skating kind of like along the benches. Caden Gooley sticks out his stick and slashes Konecny in the chest from the bench. So, and immediately Konecny's in pain. He's like grabbing his chest, skating back to his own bench. Like,
It shouldn't have been an embellishment penalty there, too.
Oh, no, come on, man. He's literally sticks his stick out and just whacks him. It's ridiculously non-disciplined by Caden Gooley. I'm surprised he only get suspended one game for this. Absolutely ridiculous. I've seen some people do some stuff from the bench. This is crazy. And the refs are right there watching it. So just kind of makes Caden Gooley look kind of very foolish there. Hopefully St. Louis gave him a tongue lashing for doing something that's stupid.
Just a quick update on this.
Sure.
It does not matter if it was penalized on the ice or not. So
That's how the other fines go, though, isn't it? All right.
Maybe it's just I've always looked up fines that were calls not called on the ice, but I thought it didn't matter. But anyways, there we go. I'm gonna leave it at that. And then we do have one other possible suspension. We'll see if he gets a hearing. It was pretty bad. If you look up the video, it happened just a few hours ago. But Vegas's Jack Eichel was given a 5-minute major and a game misconduct for spearing Kirill Kaprizov. So I'm sure in the next 24 hours we'll know if he gets a hearing. But I don't know if any of you watched the video. It was
very
bad.
intentional. Like, yeah. Spearing doesn't get called a lot, and if you want a video example of what spearing is, this is a great one. He's like this. It's kind of like when you hold it, you're holding it like a spear, like you're going full on Leonidas style with it, and you just stick them like unbelievable. Like,
it's not like he was trying to get away with it or anything. It was just.
What's crazy is there's some comments saying like, "That's barely a slash." Are you kidding me?
But the game.
Those are also the people probably saying they didn't circumvent the cap too.
Probably.
Yeah. But that game, that was not the only crazy thing we saw in that game, and that kind of takes us on to our next topic of crazy things that have been happening in the NHL.
Sorry, I briefly mentioned this one already, but we can talk about it more.
Yeah. We're all familiar if you pay attention to NHL news throughout the weeks. A few weeks ago, Minnesota dared to pull the goalie in overtime, 3-on-3 overtime. And that's when I think a lot of us learned about this very nuanced rule that if you pull your goalie, if you pull your goalie in overtime and the other team scores on your empty net, you do not get the bonus point for taking it to overtime. And Hines in Minnesota, he took the gamble against, I believe it was Nashville, and they won the game. And then tonight, just a few hours ago, in the same game that Eichel was given the 5 in a game, they tried again. And they failed. Vegas did score on the empty net, and Minnesota lost out on the point. But I guess for Minnesota, it doesn't matter because they're folding.
Folding sounds like the wrong word there because it just makes like they're done. That was it. Our franchise was hanging on the bow. We haven't seen a team fold in a long time. Oh my gosh, we've seen teams relocate, but man, folding, that's like unheard of nowadays.
Maybe folding is a triggering word for Minnesotans because
that's what I was thinking.
Stanley Cups. Anyways, who wants to take the next one? Cass, you want this one? You brought it up, Philly.
Yeah, Philly. So, for all you that don't know, apparently, like, young Russian players have to play in Russia for a certain amount of time before they can come over to the U.S.
Interesting.
That's what Michikov and Flyers organization's going through right now. Basically, that's why, like, he fell. He was supposed to be, like, a top 3 overall pick, but essentially, like, a lot of teams don't want to deal with that waiting period, from what I understand. So, this goalie, Ivan Fedorov, he was playing in
Fedotov.
SKA Moscow. Yep, he was playing in SKA Moscow, if I'm not mistaken. They terminated his contract. So, he's eligible to play for the regular seasons and the playoffs if the Flyers managed to hold on. This guy is a monster, 6'7" tall. I believe it would make him the tallest goaltender in NHL history.
Wow.
Which makes him only 2 inches shorter than Zdeno Chara. So,
I'd say he probably would be the tallest player overall too. Then, right? I don't think there's any other.
currently, yeah.
How
Char-
tall is Matt
Char-
Rempe? If Jesse was here, he would
like
have known.
6'5",
instantly.
6'5" probably. So basically, like, this would be interesting because he is supposed to be a high prospect for them, from what I understand. I don't have Amanda. Can you get me when he was drafted? What round and all that bogus, please? Do you know what round? Any chance?
7th round. By the
Seventh round. Okay. So I mean, think about it. He's 6'9" before he gets on skates too. That's a big body in the net. Remember how big Ben Bishop was when he joined the league. So obviously Philadelphia needs the goaltending help with what had happened with Carter Hart earlier this year.
Yep.
So it'll be interesting if he actually makes a start this year. And yeah, that's about that. I want to kind of see how he looks in that net.
He
I had an internet issue there for a second. Matt Rempe is 6'7". I don't know if you've
Okay.
pulled that up or not.
same
So
height.
he would. There's the same height, yeah.
So they're gonna fight. Got it. It'd be interesting to see
That'd be sick.
It'd be interesting to see if he plays in the playoffs because no one has a book on him yet. He hasn't played.
But that's also if Philadelphia makes the playoffs.
Correct.
But to give you an idea for goalie, just because I looked it up because I knew he was close, Jake Ottinger is 6'5", 2 inches shorter, but it gives you an idea of how big this guy's going to look on the ice. What was interesting is the Flyers, I guess, either re-signed him or signed him in 2022. And for the 2022-2023 season, he didn't play in the NHL or KHL. And then I guess he started playing in the KHL this year. And here we are. But it'll be very intimidating to see him play on the ice.
I'm gonna keep an eye on going towards the end of the year. You know what I mean?
Pecorine was like 6'6", I think. I feel like he was pretty tall. I could be wrong.
And then Brett, you want the Washington stuff? 6'5" for Pecorine.
Oh, 6'5". And I'm sure Cass will have some expanded stuff on this, so I don't get it all. But we've been talking a lot about the Capitals' potential move to Virginia. There's been some issues in regards to stadium and different sort of money and legal issues, but the Capitals and the Wizards have reached an agreement with DC to renovate and modernize Capital One Arena. And so the talks to move to Virginia have officially ended. They have concluded. The Wizards and Capitals ownership came to an agreement with the city for $550 million arena project. Ted Leonis. He's the owner of the Capitals and the Winners. He signed a letter of intent with the mayor, Muriel Bowser.
Can't help you.
To keep the teams in DC through 2050. A long time. The project is set to include 200,000 square feet of expansion of the arena complex into the nearby Gallery Place space to create an entertainment district in the arena. So all that talk about moving to Virginia, not going to happen. The Capitals, and if you care about the Wizards, they're both going to be staying in Washington, D.C. for a long time.
And they do expect Ovechkin to play until that that
The
in
2050.
in 2050. No, I'm just kidding.
So, from what I understand, apparently, the mayor, or you said mayor, correct, Brett?
That's what the article I found said. The mayor is who he.
So
who,
apparently,
made
they
the
were
agreement.
playing hardball and not giving any money over to help Washington, and that's why Washington was looking at other spots. And then once it got serious with another spot, they kind of
They
caved.
kind of caved.
So
Yeah.
while we're talking about that area, about an hour away from Washington, I just want to mention the bridge accident at the Francis Scott
Oh,
Key
yeah, that
Bridge
was
this
terrible.
week. I woke up and I basically broke down crying because it's like, especially like imagine like that happening to you. Like,
Yeah, I know.
so I went out and I bought glass breakers and seatbelt cutters immediately for all my vehicles. But our heart goes out to the 6 workers who are still missing and presumably dead right now. And obviously that's going to affect that area for a very, very long time. I guess it's a major port from what I understand. But like I said before, my buddy Jared lives about 40 minutes away from there. And he's an Uber driver, and he drives all kind of hours. So that was kind
I'm
of
sure
scary for a
checking
couple
in on
hours there.
him,
But
right?
everyone, yeah, everyone's okay. But that from what I understand, the first responders acted very, very quickly and got that bridge shut down basically right away once that ship lost power, which is good. So, it sucks, but it sounds like it could have been a lot worse. So.
Yeah.
When I saw the video, I'm like, that makes me never want to drive over a bridge again. Like,
Mm.
and I know it's because a boat ran into it, but still, like that video just like is like,
It crumbled too. It was just
Yeah.
like,
There's some bridges that you drive over, like in Florida. It's like you're traveling up 95 through Jacksonville, and that area that are like over tall. I'm like, don't know how comfortable I'm gonna be driving over those now. Great. It's gonna have that stupid image in my head of that one crumbling.
Now, something not in our notes, but just to kind of end this segment on a
Area.
high note before we go into milestones. 6 years after the Humboldt Broncos bus crash, that was super tragic, super terrible. One player who did survive the crash, Jacob Wasserman, if that's how you say your name. He was the goaltender for the Broncos, but he has qualified for the Paralympics in rowing, which is a huge testament to the grit and the drive behind these athletes. Like, this guy watched a ton of his friends, teammates, coaches go through injuries. Some died. Just an absolutely tragic event. And he said, I'm not giving up. And while it's not in hockey, he decides to pick up rowing and is now qualified for the Paralympics. And personally, I don't watch the Paralympics very much, but I will be watching the rowing competition for sure.
That is really cool.
But let's move on. Milestones. Kick us off, Brett.
Yeah. I got permission to talk about my team, so I was very excited.
the timer starts now.
We saw a couple teams see their players reach some significant franchise milestones, and the first one we're going to talk about is Sasha Barkov, the captain of the Florida Panthers. He can't help but continue to lead the franchise in possibly every single statistic. He scored his 700th career point, all with Florida. He's the only Florida Panther to reach that milestone. And tonight, he also scored 2 goals. He now is the franchise leader in multi-goal games with 32. No one has scored more multi-games in a Panther jersey than Alexander Barkov. I have been looking and updating my list of all the things Barkov leads in for the Panthers franchise. I think it's like 25 things now. So at the end of Barkov's career, I feel like if you think Florida Panthers, you'll end up thinking Barkov. He's still like considered kind of underrated and stuff, but given last year's playoff run, and hopefully we'll go on a couple more of those before his career's over, he should be like when you think Florida Panthers, Barkov. I feel like a lot of Panther fans still think John Van Beesbrook from '96, but Barkov's starting to take that over.
Does Barkov get the first statue?
He should, especially if we win a cup. If we win a cup, he deserves it for sure. I think even if we don't, which would suck, I think he deserves a statue out in front of Amerant Bank or whatever it will be called when he's retired, because I'm sure it will change names again.
In similar news, Jamie Benn of my Dallas Stars, he hit the 900-point mark and ties for his goals in consecutive games streak. He's currently at 6. That ties his career record. We do play the Seattle Kraken here in just a few minutes. Don't be shocked if he scores. I know I won't be. But in
Are you telling me I should bet him as an anytime goal scorer tonight? Because I will right now.
Cass is ready to throw down some money.
He's hot.
Let's see what the odds are.
He is being put in all of the big play situations because of his hot streak. So I would say it's a safe bet. Is it a for sure bet? I don't know. But
there's really no such thing as a for sure bet.
That's true.
If you're brutally honest.
But unlike your team, Brett, unlike Barkov, Jamie Benn is not leading our franchise because he is still trying to catch the great Mike Modano.
That's because your team has more like
actual
good players in their history, right? Like Panthers have not been so mediocre.
It's just the one guy. Jamie Benn is second. He is currently, let's see, 190. 1050, 901. Let's do Ethan math. Let's see. That 149 away. Yeah.
Do you think he becomes number one probably 2 seasons from now?
I think so, because I think he's also going to chase Modano's games played, and he is currently 136, 37 away.
So that's 2 seasons right there, yeah.
Yeah. I think he can do it. You know, every time fans count Jamie Benn out, he finds a way to show up randomly.
He's a star lifer for sure.
I think so.
It'd be wrong to see him in any other jersey.
Yeah, I think he'll be the captain until he retires.
And then they'll unveil a statue of him right next to the Madonna statue.
They better. Oh, man, I would love that.
I'm about to say Barkov's my favorite player and Ben's your favorite player, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
And then Cass, your team has something going on. Pasta.
Yes. So it's not my team, but tonight John Carlson played in his 1,000th NHL game. So against the Boston Bruins, who is my team. So we just wanted to give a quick shout out to him. Always an impressive stat, even though the number of players who play 1,000 game grows, is still an impressive stat nonetheless. Speaking of impressive stats, David Pastrnak now has 2 consecutive 100-point seasons for the Boston Bruins.
Who does play for your team?
Who does play for my team, and hopefully will never leave.
It's a shame.
I was kind of shocked to see this. He's the 5th player in Bruins history with consecutive 100-point campaigns. Adam Oates, Harry Peterson, and David Pastrnak both have 2 consecutive seasons, all of them. Phil Esposito has 5 consecutive seasons, and Bobby Orr as a defenseman has 6 consecutive seasons. Wild. Wild, wild, wild. Do you think if Bobby Orr's career didn't get cut short, he would be considered better than Wayne Gretzky?
The greatest? It could be.
If his agent didn't fucking lie to him, there's my one swear, and make him go to Chicago, I believe it was.
It's hard because I don't know.
It's hard to say because it's so much different. Like the era Gretzky played in was a lot different. The era Orr played in was even more different back then, and that's why he was so dominant. He was so much faster than everyone else, right? Because he was basically just going from blue line to blue line, scoring almost every play. Like, and everyone else looked like fools out there. So
that's a hard comparison. I would say that.
And I never really get to hear too much about how Bobby Orr was as like a defender, right? Because he clearly was the greatest offensive defenseman of all time. I don't think you can argue against that. Maybe some people want to say Coffey or another Bruin, Ray Bourque. But I think it's pretty clear Bobby Orr is the greatest offensive defenseman. So, and in that, we say Gretzky's the greatest of all time because he was such an overall well-rounded player with his passing, his scoring. He wasn't like early Ovechkin just sitting in his own zone in the defensive end. He was pretty solid back there. He didn't win any Selkies, but still a solid overall player. So with Bobby Orr, I don't really ever hear, and obviously there's not a ton of footage out there to really say how well he was as a defender.
That's the thing. Like Wayne Gretzky still feels like he's somewhat current with Bobby Orr. Feels like, even though it wasn't like a black and white generation, you know what I mean?
Right.
Oh, it was one of those things. Moving on from the Bruins, go ahead.
I was going to say Crosby. This is a milestone that has not happened, but it is imminent, especially with Crosby's point tonight on Rust's goal in the second period against the Blue Jackets. He is now 3 points from having 19 consecutive seasons with, I forget. I have it in my notes.
With point per game seasons.
Point per game seasons. That's what it is. And that is
insane.
You know, I'm not a huge Crosby fan, but I'm willing to go on a limb, and I'd love for anyone who disagrees to disagree with me. But I would say Crosby was a better draft pick than Wayne Gretzky.
Well, Gretzky was never a draft pick.
Oh, was he signed?
Great hot take, Ethan. Way to go.
He was signed to the Oilers in the WHA.
Let's pretend he could have been taken first overall, right? I'd still say the same thing. Because Crosby, for one, has stayed with the same team. He's got 3 cups. Is that right? 3 cups with the Penguins. Gretzky had 4, but he jumped around teams. So who would you rather get at the start of their career? Let's put it that way. Crosby or Gretzky?
You still got to take it. It depends. If we're
it all depends how your team's already built too.
I'll say this: what Crosby's done in the era of hockey he's played in has been incredibly impressive because he came into a league where scoring was really low, and he still was able to be a very successful offensive player. With Gretzky, he's a part of the most offensive generation of all time, where goaltenders had like 890 save percentages and were considered elite, right? So based on the eras, though, Gretzky is still so much further ahead of his competition compared to Crosby. And even though Crosby is considered at the top, he's not way higher than everyone else like Gretzky was.
Now, I wouldn't say Crosby is a better player than Gretzky, but I would rather, if I could pick one at the start of their career, I would take Crosby because of the consistency. He didn't jump teams. When you look at Gretzky's career, sure, he was a great player, but
Gretzky didn't want to leave.
He didn't want to, but he did over and over.
Well, the first time, I think he would have been an Oiler lifer if the Oilers never traded him, because he didn't want to be traded from Edmonton. Edmonton was in a tough financial situation and got out of it by getting a ton of cash from LA for that trade. Yeah. And so once he was with LA and couldn't really win there, that's when you start seeing him go to like St. Louis and New York and all that. So, and he did only win his cups in Edmonton. He didn't win any once he left there.
That is true. That's true.
So
all right, that's all.
We have William in our comments on YouTube saying that Crosby's better, or he's disagreeing with Ethan that Crosby is better than Wayne, and then also saying that Wayne transformed the NHL at the right time and his number is retired by all.
I agree with that. Like, if Wayne Gretzky didn't come around, I don't think the NHL would be what it is right now. But at the same time, the dynasty that the Pittsburgh Penguins were and have been before they missed the playoffs the last 2 seasons wouldn't have been. Kind of like how Mario saved the Penguins back in his time. I feel like Crosby kind of rejuvenated the Penguins in our generation.
Crosby and Ovechkin's rivalry really rejuvenated the NHL overall in the late 2000s and 2010s. We haven't really seen something like that lately. Like, I feel like
maybe like McDavid, Matthews,
but they haven't really had that impact on non-hockey fans that Ovechkin and Crosby.
They're not interdivision rivals either. You know?
Now, one thing I will say first off, yes, William. I also agree with you, even though you're disagreeing with me. Yes, Gretzky is the better player. For sure. I just think
Ethan, you have the weird talent of having an argument and agreeing with both sides of it, and somehow
no,
still
no, no,
sounding
no,
right on both
no.
of them.
My whole point was Gretzky's not the worst player. He is the better player, but consistency for Crosby is
You
huge.
need
for
them
me.
both. You need them both.
Yeah. But the thing about Crosby and Ovechkin and how they rejuvenated hockey culture, and even for non-fans, a big part of that is Olympics. Back when that was starting, Olympics were still a consistent thing that NHL players participated in. The last since 2014, NHL players haven't been allowed to. Hopefully, we see something spark here in 2026 going forward. So
I hope it stays that way.
Yeah.
We want to see the best taking on the best, right?
for sure. And then the last milestone, Amanda, you get
Amanda,
to
it's
take it
all
because
yours.
it's a plethora of things that all happened at once.
Yes.
She's excited. You guys can't see her face. She is lit up.
Again, one of the times I'll have to join the stream. But the better Sebastian Aho in the league, before the 28th game against the Wings, on the 25th, he also reached over 80 points for the third time in his career, which has all been with the Canes since 2016, I believe. Yeah, 2016, 2017. So for the third time, he's reached over 80 points, and there's still so much left in the season for him to do. And then in the game against the Red Wings, where the Canes won 4-0, at the beginning of the game, they put up a wonderful little stat with all the things that Aho was close to, all the, what's the word I'm looking for? Records he was close to breaking. Good Lord. Words are not my friend
Franchise
today.
records, though.
Yes, thank you. All franchise records for the Canes. So he registered his 300th NHL assist, which officially passes Rod Brind'Amour in the list, which that in itself is amazing to do. He also is currently tied with Kevin Dineen, so second overall for goals. And then he also is just the third player in franchise history to the three or more 80-point season. Just the third in franchise with Ron Francis and Pat Verbeek. And he did this all in one game. It's amazing. And this kid is still so young and has so many years left to play. This is another player that I see being like a lifer for the Canes.
One thing you said at the beginning is the better Sebastian Aho. It made me think of this clip. I think it was from Spitting Chicklets, but it could have come from a different hockey podcast. They had the Hurricane Sebastian Aho on, and we're asking about the other Sebastian Aho. And basically, Sebastian Aho, Hurricanes one, he basically said he was sick of hearing about it. They've been playing each other since they were 15. Like, this
I
isn't
didn't
even
realize
like
it
it
was
just
that
joined in the
long.
NHL. Like he's like I am tired of being asked about.
That's
the
almost
other
10
Sebastian
years.
Aho. Yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah, he's
So a couple other milestones before we move on, unless you have anything else to add, Amanda.
no,
I don't want to cut you off on
just
your.
like he's the better Sebastian Aho, and we win.
Statistically, yes.
No one
It's
would
not Eastern
argue that
Conference
the
final games,
Islanders,
Don't want to hear about
as
that.
the other Sebastian Aho went farther.
No.
I think he's won one Eastern Conference Finals game though, because they were in a couple years ago. Oh, please
Islanders?
make that be true. That'd be amazing. He is actually the better Sebastian Aho if he's won an Eastern Conference Final game.
All right, go ahead, Brett.
Corroborator is looking at that. Brett, do you have something to add?
You had a thing that you mentioned before we started the podcast that Jonathan Quick
Yeah.
had a milestone.
Yep. So Jonathan Quick is now the all-time winningest U.S.-born goalie in NHL history.
He's the Mike Modano of goaltenders.
Yes, he will be. Please don't ever say that again. That's disrespectful to Americans. He will be enshrined in the Hall of Fame soon after he retires.
For sure. Greatest goaltender name, really. Like, such a good name for a goaltender.
We got.
There's This is sorry, just real quick,
Oh, good,
just
good,
because I mentioned the name thing. Here is the worst name I've ever seen. There's a baseball player whose last name is literally Outman. So Outman. And think about in baseball, getting out is the worst thing you can do. So there's the 180 different things. Quick, great name for a goaltender. Outman, terrible last name for a baseball player.
Amanda, please tell me I'm right. She's still looking. Okay. Couple Leaf milestones we have to hit. Austin Matthews did, like I said, scored 60 tonight. So congratulations to him. And William Nylander and Austin Matthews set a new Maple Leafs franchise record, which you don't really hear a lot, as the first duo to score back-to-back 40-goal seasons for Toronto. Which is kind of impressive considering how long they've been around.
How old,
the rosters that they've had, yeah. But good luck winning the first round.
It's probably going to be against my team or your team, Cass.
Oh, that's a good question. What were you going to say, Ethan? Please.
The other Sebastian Aho does have more
conference
final wins.
No.
Yes. Yes.
What?
What?
He definitely does.
Nope.
Was he scratched that game?
According to his career stats for the playoffs, he's only been in the playoffs for the last season, the 2022-2023.
What?
So he didn't play in those. So even though Islanders have won
Exactly.
Eastern Conference Finals games, Sebastian Aho was not a part of that team.
So my Sebastian Aho
What
is
the
still
frig,
better.
Ethan?
Hey, that's why I'm not the fact checker.
The fact checker?
Corroborator. We have to start sounding official. Corroborator.
But he was part of the team. He was part of the team when they won.
He just wasn't on
playing.
Start playing, yeah.
Oh, man. Well, anyways. Now, moving on to playoffs to wrap things up. We've got some teams that have clinched. And surprisingly, they are every team represented on this podcast +1 after tonight. First to clinch was the New York Rangers. Then, and that's Jesse's team. Then it was Cass's Boston Bruins. Then it was Brett's Florida Panthers. Then Amanda's Carolina Hurricanes. And then wrapping up, but first in the Western Conference, my Dallas Stars. And then tonight, Colorado also clinched.
It's a shame Colorado clinched because it could have been just our teams. Wasn't that a shame?
It was just hours away. But yeah, so let's like kind of put a bow on the whole thing. Who do you guys think is facing the most pressure heading into this final stretch? We've got about 21 days left.
I would say
wait. 19 days. 19 days left in the season.
I'm going to go with Philly. They are currently in a playoff position, but they have not been playing their best lately. They even dropped out of the third place spot in the Metro and are now hanging on to the second wild card, only 2 points ahead of Detroit, who has a game in hand. Islanders are 5 points behind them. They have 2 games in hand on them. And I guess with Philly, their Hail Mary is making sure that Russian goaltender kid is here. Maybe he can fix the issues they've been dealing with. Because basically with the Flyers, since they're not bad, this is them just finishing outside the playoffs would be like the worst possible scenario for them, because they're not going to get a top draft pick and they don't get a taste of some playoff success. They wouldn't go far. I think they'd be a first round exit, but still just getting in would be a huge success. So I'd say there's a lot of pressure on them to kind of make the playoffs, because if they don't, they're not going to be picking third or fourth, fifth overall.
Now, see,
they weren't expected to make it either.
I know, but I'm saying with the position they've put themselves in now, like they kind of feel like they need to make it.
See, I would agree with that, other than the fact, and it goes back to something we talked about on the podcast with Sean Walker. The whole thing was, if they trade Sean Walker, that's them saying we're done. Like, why would you trade him? What if you don't trade him? are you in a better position to make the playoffs?
They probably should have hung on to him, but so it's kind of maybe like the way the players in John Tortorella is like not like fitting with maybe Danny Briere's idea for how the season would go. So who knows? Danny Briere's trying to say like, no, I'm not ready for us to make it yet, and Torts and the players like, well, we're gonna do our darndest to make it here.
Yeah. And if you had Drysdale.
Jamie Drysdale, yeah.
You never know. Maybe Fedotov will become the next Andrew Hammond and lead that team in the Eastern Conference Finals.
Or
you see the
Thomas.
picture of him?
Throwback Hamburglar.
What about Tim Thomas? How did you not go to Tim Thomas?
Well, Tim Thomas was a veteran. So.
He was like 30.
He played stellar, but he was in the league for a while. Did you see the picture of Fedotov next to Danny Briere?
Danny Briere.
And there was like basically a
dude. That's like when
do
you remember the picture of Shaq and Kevin Hart? That's what that is.
What about you, Cass? Who do you think's in the hot seat here in the last 19 days?
I mean, it's kind of. I was gonna say Vegas, but Vegas has moved up to the third spot in the
they're hot.
Pacific, so I think
sucks.
they're okay. I mean, it's that Eastern Conference wild card is basically like it could be like any 5 teams. You know what I mean? Like even
Jersey.
Pittsburgh's still in it. New Jersey's somewhat in
Buffalo.
it. Buffalo's not doing jack shit.
Buffalo's right there with Pittsburgh, though, in terms of points.
I don't know. It's gonna. I mean, no one ever wants to get it, but this President's Trophy race, I don't remember seeing one this tight in a very, very long time. You know, as much as we say we don't want it and stuff.
And ironically, all of our teams are competing.
Literally, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6.
Yeah,
place in the league.
The teams that all clinched are the teams that are in that President's Trophy conversation.
Yep.
Yeah,
so,
you know. Oh, you never gave your pick, yeah.
I don't know if I have one. Like,
he wanted to go Vegas.
No, it sounds stupid because they already clinched, but the Bruins have not been playing well lately. So they're playing. Listen to the rest of the schedule, right? So we get a minute. So here we go. The Bruins schedule for the rest of the year is as follows: Nashville, Carolina, Florida, Carolina, Pittsburgh, Washington, Ottawa.
Yeah, that's not an easy one.
That's a very good schedule to gauge how well you're coming into the playoffs. So I'm kind of happy that they're not playing like Columbus, Anaheim, Arizona crap, you know. So, but it's going to be interesting to see what happens at the same time. If they play well, you know. But besides the Florida game, I don't remember them having an abundance of goals anytime recently. You know, like they've all been under 3-goal games for the most part the last couple of weeks. So, I was going to say, obviously, with their goaltending and defense, they're always going to be in a game for the most part. But their offense hasn't been there lately. And it's kind of one of those things you worry about when Bergeron and Krejci left. I will say, and I said it earlier this year, I don't know if there was someone who came in on a PTO who signed a contract who has been better this year than Danton Heinen. The kids fit in. I think he's playing second-line minutes for the Bruins at $750 or $775K. And I want them to sign him to a 2 or 3-year deal immediately. Cheap money.
When you were talking, Cass, I didn't realize how similar the struggles were the Florida Panthers and Bruins were going through. Because we are basically having the same thing. We won today in a shootout, but we blew another lead. We've blown a lead in, I think, 4 straight games, which is not a great look. We have only had we're batting 500 in the month of March. In the last 7 games, we only have 2 wins. So Panthers are also struggling here down the stretch, and it's been facing some good teams like Boston, which we didn't win. And I guess we get one more rematch to see where that's going to be. So, yeah, to get the top of the East, maybe it is that fear of having the President's Trophy. Like you're taking your foot off the gas a little bit. I don't know.
Well, then you look at like matchups. You know, we're talking about matchups. Like Florida or Boston are going to be 1 or 2. So one of those 2 teams are playing Toronto, and one of those teams are probably going to play Tampa Bay. That's how it looks right now. Who would you rather play, Tampa Bay or Toronto?
Hey, didn't I ask you that before we even started recording?
Well, you didn't give me your opinion.
Who I? Oh wait, no, I agreed with you. Sorry, I remember our conversation. Yeah, I'd say we both agreed we'd rather face Toronto than Tampa.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, Bruins played Tampa, I believe it was this weekend. It was a close game, and it was a hard game. And like I said, the Bruins just can't score right now, and it's kind of scary to a certain extent.
You guys have consistently said Tampa's better than Toronto on this podcast this season. Over and over in rankings, in who's going to make the playoffs, and all these
You mean
things. And
Toronto
you're
over
both-
Tampa?
Yeah, sorry. And you're both scared of Tampa.
That's
Yeah,
because they're hot
like
right now.
I said that in the beginning of the year. If they get hot in the second half of the season when Vasilevsky comes back, the Duclair trade and the Dumba trade have worked out perfectly for that team. It's exactly what that team needs.
Like,
So-
but okay, let me put it into my perspective then.
I only see them
team-
twice a year, so go ahead.
No. My perspective would be a team getting hot in the West, and especially in my division, the Nashville Predators. Very hot, which worth mentioning real quick. Their streak was ended by the Arizona Coyotes, the homeless Arizona Coyotes. And
forgot to mention good old Josh Doan.
oh
Getting
yeah,
two goals. Sorry, that was supposed to be a milestone thing. Here, real quick. Josh Doan, son of Coyotes legend Shane Doan, scored 2 goals in his Coyotes debut. And this was kind of weird. He's the only Coyote in franchise history to score 2 goals in a debut. So,
I
congratulations.
could be
to Josh
mistaken.
Doan.
I think he got 2 assists the next game as well.
He could have. Logan Cooley got a hat trick when they broke Nashville's streak.
and it probably one of very few players to get more than 2 or more than 1 goal in a Coyotes game. Anyways, not
Anyway,
really,
so
but-
Nashville
So
is getting
Nashville,
hot.
that's a team that's getting hot here at the end of the season. But you know what? I would so love to play Nashville in the first round. Oh my gosh, I would eat it up. It's an easy win. Easy first round.
Ooh, that could be words to eat later.
Hey, we'll find out. But as for my pick for who's on the hot seat, it's definitely going to be in the East, Detroit.
Detroit's a good pick.
They're right there. They're trying to build. This is like their coming out season where it's like, okay, things are working. This is what we're doing. We're going to build on this. And then for the West, I think St. Louis is an easy pick, but I think the hidden pick is LA.
Yeah.
LA has the spot, but I think they're in the hot seat to lose the spot.
Well, think about how good they were at the beginning of the season, right? It seemed like they were a shoo-in for one of those top 3 spots, and now they're just hanging on to that second wild card position.
And it goes
So,
back
I think
to
that's a good pick.
why'd they fire Todd McClellan or whatever his name is?
Yeah.
Why'd they fire him? That was it. You had it going, and you, for whatever reason, made this move, and it just has not worked out.
No. I honestly think, and I think I've mentioned this before, they did that because of the success the Oilers saw, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
the
yeah, we've
Oilers
talked about
fired
that,
their
yeah.
coach, and like they went. Oilers are one of the best teams since they did that. So LA, they started to struggle a little bit. They still were fine in the standings, but they were struggling a little bit. They made the firing coach, and things haven't changed. If anything, they've gotten a little bit worse. So yeah, that wasn't the right call.
While we're talking about like playoff seeding and conference, I just do want to give a shout out to whoever made the schedule this year. So, NHL season ends on the 18th, which is a Thursday. On the 15th, right? The Islanders play the Devils. That
Nice.
could be playoff implications. The next day on the what the heck? I hate this app. This app sucks. I'm not going to tell you what it sucks, but it sucks. On the
Sucks
16th,
a lot.
Yes, sucks a lot of things. Capitals play the Flyers. Maple Leafs play the Panthers.
Oh my gosh, Washington, Philly, that is huge.
On the 17th, Penguins, Islanders, Maple Leafs, Lightning. And on the last day of the season, you have, no, there was one here. Oilers, Avalanche, and Canucks, Jets, which would be 2.
Some
So there's
playoff
some
previews there.
Yeah. So we might more the weeks go on, the tighter I think it's going to get, and I think it's going to come down to the end for a couple teams here, which is going to be awesome.
Even
Don't
for the
call it
teams that have
scripted.
clinched, it's like the seeding is
Still
all
have to watch, yeah.
up.
Oh yeah. So,
Boy, it'll be exciting.
sounds like
So-
something to talk about next week.
Yeah. I was gonna say, stay tuned because here in the final stretch, things are gonna get a little bit more opinionated. I'm sure. We're moving a little bit more away from NHL news, injury updates, trades, signings, whatnot, and going more into just speculative. What's going to
Yeah.
happen? Who's going to win the cup? We're coming up to the end of the season. Don't forget, if you follow us on one outlet, look for us on other outlets. We are on Facebook. We're on YouTube. We're on X at Top Shelf Dusters. So same thing across the board.
We are not on X. I do not want a drug test. Thank you.
You're on X, the X Twitter.
Formerly known
Twitter.
as Twitter. The platform
I know,
formerly known as Twitter.
I'm sorry to all the fans out there. I know you really enjoyed this episode without Jesse, but Jesse will be back next weekend. The Rangers still suck, even though they're first. So, suck it, Jesse. Our bet's coming down to the wire. We're gonna see what happens.
We'll
We go
see.
from there.
We will see.
But yeah, and then again, if you do have topics that you want us to talk about here in the final stretch, our email is topshelfdusters@gmail.com, and send us some topics or comment on our videos like William did, even though we both
Ed
agreed on
Carolina's
the
going to
same
win the
thing.
President's Trophy, which I love.
I told him no, thank you.
Just give us
We
your
passed.
opinions. Interact with us. We want it.
Yeah. It makes things fun.
Amanda's scaring away our fans.
Well, Amanda, do you want to take us out?
We pretty much covered everything. Follow us at all of those: Facebook, X, Top Shelf Dusters. Make sure you listen to us every Tuesday at 9 a.m. Re-listen to us, catch things that you may have missed. But thanks everyone for listening. Thanks for commenting and joining us. I'm Amanda.
This is Brett.
This is Cass.
And this is Ethan.
Have a good night, y'all.
Happy Easter.